Good afternoon, everyone. It's so nice to welcome you to our newest installment of the Lunch and Learn series for the Wyoming Airports Coalition. My name is Kyle Butterfield. I'm the immediate past president for the coalition and have opportunity to serve on the education committee. And again, I'm just so happy to welcome you. We've already got several people online, and we hope more join as we're working through just the intro to this. As I always say, the Airport Coalition is something that I personally have found a lot of value in and professionally. And so we hope that as we gather together as a group virtually or in person at our conferences, that you find that your membership makes you a better professional and improve your communities, your airports. And today's topic, I know, will allow you to do that. We're very lucky to have our current president, Devin Brubaker, with us, who's the chair of our Legislative Affairs Committee. And then we have our public advocacy consultants with us today. We have Sherlyn Kaiser and Lori Erbekite with us. I joked with them that I'd introduce them as award-winning public advocacy consultants, and it's not a joke now. It's real. I'm saying it. But I can tell you, they are so professional. They understand our state. They understand Cheyenne. They understand how things work, and that's because they have so much experience in working with organizations across the state, legislators through the years, and we've been privileged to have them working for us for several years. And I can state that we've seen a benefit from that. And now, as we're getting ready for our legislative session, which is a budget session, we will benefit in hearing from them in how to talk and how to speak to our legislators, how to inform them of the things that affect us and how to make change when it's necessary. And then also to be aware of some other items that we should be paying attention to this session. So with that introduction, I'll go ahead and go backstage and turn the time over to our presenters. As always, I'll be monitoring the chat and the Q&A, so please feel free to reach out throughout. But welcome and thank you for joining us.
Awesome. Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate the introduction and appreciate you and your committee setting up these great webinars for the coalition and our members. Thank you, Sherilyn and Lori, for joining us today. Obviously, very timely topic. We are a month and a day away from the kickoff of the budget session of the Wyoming legislature. That'll kick off on February 9th. Ignore the date that I'm about to show on our slideshow. I think we were off by a day, getting a little overzealous on our date. Didn't catch it till this moment. But we are January 8th and the session kicks off February 9th. It is a budget session, it is a 20-day session, and I'm sure Sherilyn and Lori will dive into that. I'm going to kick us off, though, before we dive into the 101 portion. And I'm hoping everybody's able to see the screen now. Sherilyn and Lori can nod if it's popping up.
Yes.
Perfect. So to get us kicked off here, see if I can control the slideshow. There we go. Just a bit of an update on where we're at. We've already done our introductions. The goals for today is to cover some of the key issues that we're paying attention to in the Wyoming legislature. And then really the meat of this webinar today, this meeting, is for Sherilyn and Lori to share with you all the nitty-gritty details of how the legislature works, how a bill becomes a law, how we work the legislature in terms of providing education, providing information, how to best contact your legislators, and a little bit of lay of the land on who's in leadership in the legislature and things like that. I might have got that backwards in order, so bear with me, but Sherilyn and Lori have a whole host of information that they're going to share with you. Before we get to that, though, I do want to talk about some of the key issues that the Legislative Affairs Committee, alongside Lori and Sherilyn, are working on. Obviously, I mentioned it's a budget session. So the Joint Appropriations Committee is wrapping up tomorrow their third week of budget hearings. Next week, they will start markup on the budget. So starting Monday, they will start going through the governor's budget and or their own budget that they've created and starting to mark it up as a committee, with the plan by the end of next week to have a budget bill that can get sent to the House and the Senate for consideration. The budget has a whole host of impacts, has a potential of having a whole host of impacts on airports. whether that be YDOT funding increases, YDOT funding decreases, whether that be air service funding, whether that be local government funding. As many of us on this call are aware, 37 of our 40 public use airports rely on city, town, and county financial support to operate their airports. And of the 9 commercial service airports, there's many of us that rely on city and county or town financial support for our air service as well. So any impact to funding to the local governments has a trickle down impact, and any impact to YDOT funding has a potential to have a trickle down impact on us. So those are all things that we're watching in the budget session. Obviously, we're hoping that the legislature can find a path forward to get a budget done. There is the chance, with as much uh, division that exists in our legislature right now, that we get to the end of the 20 days and no budget is agreed to. We don't know what that looks like because that's never happened in Wyoming history. So we'll see how that plays out. We're also paying attention to a bill that has not been published yet, but will be forthcoming, and that's modifications to the Public Records Act and how it would impact our members. There is a bill that is already published, House Bill 30, that would reduce vehicle registration rates, which would have about a $30 million a year impact negatively to YDOT's budget. There's a data privacy bill for government entities, Senate File 20, that we're working. This is a bill that died last year and has come back in a very similar form. So we're working that bill and making sure that our airports are able to do what they need to do with Department of Homeland Security, TSA, et cetera, without being compromised by state statute. We're always keeping an eye on governmental property tax exemptions. That died during the interim, so we're hoping it stays dead till next interim. But it doesn't mean that an individual legislator won't bring that bill forward. Local government funding, as I already talked about, there could be separate legislation regarding that. And then there's already 67 bills published as of this morning. We are a month away from the session. There will be hundreds more published between now and then, and we review every single one of them to see if there's impacts on airports or our tenants or our users. And so we will continue. Kyle, you're back. Are we having any issues?
Excuse me, I just wanted to make sure we were recording. I apologize to interrupt.
Okay, no, just wanted to make sure we were good. So everything is on the table. Your Legislative Affairs Committee is keeping an eye on every single bill. We work alongside the Wyoming Association of Municipalities. We work alongside the County Commissioners Association. We work alongside the Wyoming Economic Development Association and many other trade associations around the state. We work alongside them. We help each other. We sometimes catch things that other people don't catch and share information. And then we work together. Sometimes we may not have a relationship with a key legislator, but Ashley at WAM does, or Jeremiah at County Commissioners does. And then we work together to navigate these legislative issues. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sherilyn and Lori. Before I do that, I do want to remind you that if you have questions on any specific topic, if you have questions on procedure, process, please put it into the Q&A or the chat. And that when we get to the end, Kyle will bring that forward. And if Kyle sees something that needs to be brought forward right away, he'll bring that forward right away to us as well. But please, we're going to try to leave time at the end for questions and comments. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Sherilyn and Lori, and I'm going to do my best to stay up with them on the slides, but they may have to tell me next slide if I get distracted. So.
Thank you, Devin, and thank you, Kyle, very much. Lori and I really appreciate the opportunity to provide this legislative 101. It's all about communication and understanding the process, to effectively advocate for the association. And a lot of times you have questions about how a bill becomes a law. And, Lori and I were talking about this morning is when we were, first started, you didn't have computers.
And we were very, very young when we first started.
We did. Yeah, a tablet was something, that was, made out of marble. And, and we had to, depend on the Wyoming Taxpayers Association and their report at night at 10 o'clock at night. And so, we would have to stay at the Capitol to talk to the chairman just to see what was going to be posted. And so learning the process, it took a while. And so we thought it might be worth your time to take a minute to learn, just a lot of it you're going to know, but hopefully we'll be able to walk through the website and we'll be able to answer some of the questions that you might have. So when we do contact you and say we need you to contact your legislator, if you feel comfortable with a message, because it's an amendment, and the amendment is to the appropriations bill, and it's moving fast, and we need it done right now. That learning the process, may assist you and to understand the urgency of what we're working with. And so with that, we just kind of start with Legislative 101.
Right, Legislative 101. So as you probably already know, there are 93 members of the legislature. We are a citizens legislature. And it, excuse me, never ceases to amaze me that people think that our legislators actually run for this office because they get paid so well. This is not a true story. They do not get paid well. They are really volunteers as citizens legislature. It's also, when we say citizens legislature, it's important for you to remember, excuse me, I'm getting over a little bit of a cold. It's important that you understand they don't have staff. Now, the leadership in both houses has staff, but your individual members, it's just them. They don't have anybody that's looking this stuff up for them, helping them understand the process or the the actual issues. So that's where you really come in importantly.
So I always like to think of the lobby or coalition work or constituent services as the third house. Since it is a part-time legislature, citizen legislature, we're the experts in the field. They're going to turn to us because there's no way that a part-time member is going to know everything about an issue. And so I always considered we're the education, arm of the legislature. And so we take that responsibility very seriously, and we reach out and want the best information available to the legislators as they make those decisions. And so I guess management council is probably where we start with that. Management council is the leadership and the administrative arm of the legislature. So whenever you talk about calendar and how the calendar is set, or the policies and the handbooks, anything, and the appointments of the committees, it is going to be your management council. That is absolutely the administrative arm. So, a lot of times in the beginning of a session, especially when it's a new session with a new president or a new House Speaker, the management council, they will look at the committees and determine the committees, and and the final say is certainly with the president and the speaker, but management council is right there, serving administratively. And and they appoint the director of the Legislative Service Office, which the Legislative Service Office is the support to the legislature. And so they're the staff attorneys that write the bills, that will write the amendments and provide support to the committees. And then also volunteers, they're not volunteers, but they're part-time, are the committee secretaries, who are critical part of the session, and working with the Legislative Service Office. I forgot to put them down because I spent a lot of time with the committee secretaries, and they're just a wealth of information, and and they're key to, if you ever need to get some information to a committee, the secretaries are the ones that will get that information through.
And they oftentimes know more about when a bill is going to be heard in a committee, which we'll get into that whole process. But they are a wealth of information, and they're usually retired citizens of Cheyenne that just volunteer to do this, and they are critical. So never overlook a good secretary. And then again, the management council is the one that assigns the interim committee topics. But at least they used to. Things have changed a bit. So it used to be for the interim committees, the committee chairs would meet with their committees, and then they would talk about what they really wanted to do a deep dive. And that's what the interim committee's all about, is that gives the legislators the opportunity to do a real deep dive into some of the more complex issues. So management council used to assign those topics after the chairman would give their wish list to management council, and management council would decide whether or not that was something that they thought was appropriate. They kind of changed that now, and they're kind of like letting the committee chairs do pretty much what they want, but then they cut back the number of days they can meet. So it really limits them a lot more. But they used to always assign the interim topics. So with that, we'll move on to the next slide.
The legislative sessions. I think a lot of times there's a lot of confusion about the 40-day session and the 20-day session. And, by the Constitution, the legislature can meet for 60 days. And so traditionally it has been the business end is the 40 days where, in the general business of the legislature for Wyoming. And in the budget session, which is a 20-day legislative days, is really technically for the budget to talk about the finances and the funding government and moving government forward. And so those are the even numbered years. And so trying to keep that within control, during a budget session, which is what we're coming up. And, the Appropriations Committee has worked on it, as Devin indicated, been working the bill. They'll start marking up the budget bill. But other legislators will be looking at other pieces of legislation that they'd like to bring forward for their constituents or for other purposes. And they will require a 2/3 vote in order to be introduced. And so that is just really the purpose of that, is to try to keep that calendar streamlined. And, so with the exception of the budget bill, and legislative redistricting, any other bill will require a 2/3 vote. And so that kind of gives us a little breathing room with some of the topics that may be introduced. But it also restricts, some of the bills that we'd like to see move forward as well.
Well, and I'll just jump in and interrupt, but that is one of the reasons. I mean, when we talk with clients, with people that we represent, we try to make certain that they understand clearly that to introduce a bill in the budget session is very difficult. Now, there are two kinds of bills you can kind of slide in during a budget session. One is a very simple one. It's just a little simple one, no controversy, shouldn't take much time. That's always a good one if there's an issue like that. The other one is if it's absolutely a crisis, like we've got to fix this and we've got to fix it now. We can't wait another year. So those are the two that you might be able to get through. But again, remember, 2/3 vote is very difficult, especially in the House. They have to have 42 votes. And as Devin had mentioned earlier, we have a very divided legislature right now. There's the moderates and there's the Freedom Caucus people, and neither one controls 2/3. So it's going to be a very interesting budget session this year to see what kind of bills will get a 2/3 vote for introduction. I think it's going to be tough.
Yeah. And then finally, special sessions, as Devin indicated, the budget is somewhat contentious. And, we may face it, not having a budget this year. And so the governor and the legislature can call a special session and reconvene and for, specific topics. And so that is another time that, we would be calling as a coalition to the membership and ask for assistance at that time.
We're hoping that doesn't happen, quite frankly, because after 20 full days with these people fighting over a budget, the prospect of coming back for another week or more for a special session is not on top of our bingo card.
Yeah, we used to consider it summer camp, not so much anymore. So, okay.
Move on, Devin. Let's look at the next one.
Okay.
there's your leadership in the Senate. And so it's President Bo Biden, he's from Sheridan. The vice president is Tim Salazar. And even though he's listed as vice president, he doesn't carry as much weight as the third position, which is majority floor leader. That's Tara Nethercott from Cheyenne. And then you have two Democrats in the Senate. So they are the minority floor leader, Mike Garreau from Jackson, and minority whip, Chris Rothfuss from Laramie. So Bo Biden, the president, he gets to set the calendar, how bills are going to be read in. That's up to him. The first reading of the bills. And if he doesn't like a bill, he doesn't have to read it in, and it never goes anywhere. It's just done. Then after they're read in and assigned, and we'll go through all that, then Tara Nethercott's job is to set the daily committee of the whole schedule, which again is a very, very important position, because if she doesn't like a bill, it doesn't necessarily ever get put on the general file. They'll run out of time and it won't get heard. So that's why we wanted to make certain you understand who the leadership is. These two people are very important in the Senate. And then if we go on to the next, you can see.
Lori and Sherilyn, one thing I would say to that, just for the membership's knowledge, we make sure we have a relationship with those two individuals. And we'll see the House side here in a minute, but Scott Heiner on the House side, to spoil the next slide, and Tara Nethercott, we make sure we have those on speed dial. If there's a bill that we're hoping doesn't see time of day, then we work that issue, or with the president or the Speaker of the House, we work that issue. And can you keep it in your drawer? That's what we say if you hear us use those terms, can we get Beitman to keep it in the drawer, or can we get Nethercott to keep it in the drawer? That's what that means, is we're trying to get them to kill the bill for us, basically.
And then before we move on, also just to point out that the leadership is a management council. And so even though you have your two Dems, don't forget about them either, because they will carry your message to management council.
Well, and the other important thing to realize, and you can go on to the next slide, Devin, we talked about the House leadership. But the important thing to remember or to know is, how do these people get to these positions? What kind of magic wand is there? There is not. They are elected by the members of each body. So in the past, there have been times where there were enough Democrats that if they joined with a different faction on with the Republicans, they could actually control some of these elections, because they get to vote as well. Now they haven't had enough warm bodies lately, especially in the Senate, to make a difference. But in the House, they can make a little bit of a difference. So, but they are, and years gone by, there was never a real battle over who was going to be leadership, which that has certainly changed. Absolutely has changed. And there have been some people that thought they were in line to be president or speaker, and somebody else built a coalition and somebody else got elected. So normally the majority floor leader, both in the Senate and the House, is kind of an automatic move up to president or speaker of the House. But that is not always the case these days. So we try to keep our ears wide open and our finger on the pulse to see who may be leadership next year, because it's critical.
And and I think that especially in the House with the Speaker and the House leadership, it's important to know that with as many new legislators as we have, this is the leadership that trains the new legislators. And so establishing, those relationships, in the beginning are critical for us. And so a lot of times, I think 2 years ago, we reached out and says, what does everybody know? And we're, who has, personal relationships with any of these individuals, and help us, to get to know them. And so that is why we're doing that, is so we can try to establish those relationships.
early on.
Yep.
Okay, next slide.
Just as a time check for you guys, we're at 12:26.
Okay, we'll talk faster. So we'll run through the committee process very quickly. So there's 12 parallel committees, both in the Senate and the House. During the interim, they meet together, and usually they take turns. The chairman of the Senate will run one day meeting, and the chairman of the House will run the next day, or back and forth. Sometimes they split it up morning and afternoon. And they do meet, the interim committees meet all around the state. So, and we'll get to the legislative website in a bit, but that's why it's critically important that you understand that website and where to look, so you can see the calendar and you can find out if they're meeting in your hometown. And if they are, you really should be there.
And then I just like to add that even though a bill has been assigned to a committee, the chairman of the committee, they elect whether the bill comes up in their committee or
Right.
not.
They set the calendar for
And
the
so
meeting.
once again, that's another area where we try to meet with the chairman and get to know them very, very well, so we can get our bills either moved or,
Killed.
yeah, well.
Yeah.
And
Dead on the
we
right.
found a lot of success over the last couple of years getting committee chairs to keep drawers in, or bills in their drawer to get them killed. So
Okay, you can move on. We're going to talk fast because there's more important things to tell you yet. So these are your committees. And they meet the same time so like some of them will meet Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 a.m. or 7 a.m. Some will meet Tuesdays and Thursdays at noon. And they establish that calendar up front. And so you'll always know when, like your transportation, highway, and military affairs are going to meet, unless they get bogged down and they have to call a special meeting. But that is all on the website as well. And the website, and we have the links we'll show you in a bit, but it's WYOLEG, WYOLEG.gov. And it is the place you need to bookmark and have at your fingertips at all times.
And then I would just add on these committees, you look at transportation and just assume that's where we would be because, that's a primary topic, or appropriations. But through the process, sometimes if they're moving through the calendar, we will be assigned to different committees, or if it's a regulatory issue, we may end up in corporations or in minerals, business, and economic development. So familiarizing yourself with all of the committees is always, a really good idea, because you don't know where you're going to be assigned at times.
I think we've been in front of every one of these committees in the last 2 years for a topic that impacts airports. So,
except for maybe rules and procedures.
Yeah. And journal. Yeah, I don't think we've ever gone in front of journal.
Thank God.
Okay, next slide. This one is important. Anytime during this process, a bill can die. I mean, it is so much easier to kill a bill than it is to pass forward-thinking legislation. It's, and quite frankly, killing bills is my favorite thing to do. I mean, I enjoy that process a lot. I get yelled at a lot by some legislators after I somehow manage to thwart them. But nonetheless, anytime during this process, bills can be amended so you don't even recognize it, or they can die.
And with the amendment process, I do have to point out that sometimes you're forced to kill your own bill because of a momentum that may happen. And so the amendment process to me is probably as important as the testifying and the hearing process. That's where we really have to pay attention.
And so then, Devin, if you move on to the next slide, we'll talk about the process. And if you're Sherilyn and I's age, or a little older or younger, maybe a little, you might recognize the little cartoon guy. That's a bill on Capitol Hill that the
Schoolhouse Rock
sings. Sherilyn can break into song at any time as well.
But you don't want that.
But we decided we wouldn't do that to you. So here's the process. First, the bill has to be drafted. And normally it's a constituent or an organization may come to a legislator and say, hey, we just looked into this and we've got a problem. Can you help us legislatively? They then will talk to the LSO and the Legislative Service Office and have them draft a bill. Then it goes to the first chamber. Either it's a Senate file or it's a House bill. So then it's introduced by the Senate President or the Speaker of the House, and he or she then assigns it to a committee. Then the committee chairman decides when they're going to hear it and looking at their calendar. And at that time, they'll take public comment, they'll consider amendments, and they do basically what they call work the bill. They go page by page, and then they have options. They can have a do pass, a do not pass, or a do pass with amendments, or return without recommendation. So that's the committee work is so critically important. And I just urge you to consider jumping on the YouTube and watching some of these committees do their work. It is fascinating.
And I will just add, most of our communication during the legislative process is in the committee hearings, and the advance work for the committee hearings.
Absolutely. So then the next, after it comes out of committee, it is reported out of committee, and then the president or not the president, the majority floor leader in either house will put it on what's called committee of the whole. And that is, and then when it's heard there, they have unlimited debate. They, in the House, all of them feel the need to stand up and talk about every bill. They're not quite that bad in the Senate, but in the House, they like to be heard. And so they normally don't have a lot of amendments on the committee of the whole, but because they're learning about the whole bill. Then on second reading, there's amendments. Normally, I mean, there can be. And then there's also the possibility of amendments on the third reading. When it passes the third reading, off it goes to the next chamber for the same process.
Yes. So it's a miracle process.
And real quick, one other step that happens during committee of the whole is if a committee has amendments to a bill, the amendment from the committee has to be heard during committee of the whole, and it can be shot down. So if the committee amends a bill, the committee of the whole can kill the committee amendment to that bill. So
absolutely. And a bill can die at any one of the processes. It's happened in my career at, committee of the whole, second reading and third reading. So
they normally don't try to kill bills on second reading, but I do have to chime in and let you know that I watched it happen to a bill that Sherilyn was working on several years ago, because the whoever's in the chair will say, they read the bill number and say, having been read, having passed the committee of the whole, shall the bill be read a third time with no objection. And all of a sudden, a senator jumped up and he said, I object. And so then they had to call for a vote, and they killed Sherilyn's bill. It was a real lesson. It was a long time ago, but it was very fascinating.
Yes, it was a lesson. So as we move forward, we go into the second chamber and we start the process over again.
okay. It does it the whole thing all over again. And I would add too here that it can die truly at any time. We had a very important bill to airports several years ago that we worked very hard. We got it through the Senate. We got it through the House all the way to third reading. And the bill died by one vote on third reading in the House. And it was our airport districts bill. It even got a motion for reconsideration, which also then died. But it can happen at the beginning, and it can happen on the very last vote by one vote. Anytime you think you got it in the bag, you don't have it in the bag. So
that is so true. It's so true. And it was so heavily amended. It was difficult to keep track of what they were doing on the floor. So
then so now we're going to believe that our lovely little bill has passed both houses. But maybe the second house amended it a little differently than the first house. And so now, how do you decide which one's going to carry the day? So it goes back to the House of Origin, and they have a vote whether or not to concur with the second house's amendments. They can vote to concur, and then we're done. Then off to the governor's office. Or they can vote not to concur. And if they do that, then both sides have to appoint a joint conference committee. And this gets real exciting because we're getting towards the end of session, and you got to figure out where those people are meeting, when they're going to meet, and then whether or not they can get a approval by both sides. And it can go to three conference committees. So the first one, they can only mess with what it was actually amended. The second one is an open one, and they can then change anything in the bill that the joint conference committee wants to change. So it gets really dicey because you're losing control at that juncture. I mean, you're really, truly losing control.
And this is especially true with the appropriations bill and with the budget bill. And so that's why you see through the process, a joint appropriation or joint conference committee appointed, and then they can't come to an agreement, and then another one is appointed. So there's some kind of control. But, once again, it can be heavily amended at this point. And so, once again, we reach out to coalition members and to reach out to their legislators, especially if they're on the joint conference committee, to, for whatever interests that we're trying to represent at this point.
And it can die again. In fact, we had a bill that we were working on last year that died. The House amended it substantially, and the Senate was outraged by it. And so they basically refused to meet with the House Conference Committee and killed the bill. So it's another way for the poor little bill to die, but it can happen. But then if it does get approved by both sides, off to the governor's office. Now, a lot of people think that the governor is going to sign it immediately. He doesn't have to sign immediately. He can let it go into law without signing it, or he can veto it, or he can line item veto, which will probably happen a lot in the budget bill if they get a budget bill to him. But it also has to go through, it has to go to the Attorney General's office for their review before it goes to the governor. And so just because it passed on, say, February 20th, doesn't mean that the governor is going to get it on the 21st. He's weighs heavily on the advice of the Attorney General, whether it's constitutional, whether it does what the legislators thought it was going to do. So that's critically important to understand as well.
And then finally, the governor has a line item veto. And so he's able to tailor a lot of his remarks and to adjust where it's necessary and needed in a piece of legislation, especially in the budget. And so, and assuming everyone agrees, and the bill finally becomes a law.
And normally the bill's traditional effective date is July 1 of that year, but oftentimes you'll see legislation that is effective immediately upon passage and everybody signing and doing everything they need to sign. Those are those critical bills that need to happen right this minute. So two bits worth on that.
One other way that we didn't talk about the bills die is by schedule. So there's a very strict schedule that happens, and I have it up on one of my other screens here in the office. I have every one of these dates in my Outlook calendar, so I know exactly where they're at. But a bill can die by deadline, whether it's reporting out of committee in the original House, the second House, or coming out of last day out of committee of the whole, second reading, third reading. And so if the bill doesn't make it through that step by that deadline, then the bill dies as well. So that's why we say keep it in the drawer, because then it'll hit that deadline and then it'll die because it stayed in the drawer instead of being heard on that front. So
great comment, Devin. Thank you for adding that.
So, and when you look at the legislative website and you're looking at bills, make certain you're looking at the most current version. So there's the introduced version, and that's what will be debated in the committee of the whole, or debated in the committee, and then in the committee of the whole. If it is amended, then it's called an engrossed bill. And then when it's passes both chambers, it's the enrolled bill. So make sure when you're looking at bills that you are paying attention to and looking at the current version, because so much can change in amendments. I mean, you may be looking at a totally different concept by the time they get done amending it. So those are just some terms that we want to make sure that you are familiar with. And the next slide has additional legislative terms.
Yeah, it's so much easier. So a lot of times, we forget that, well, a fiscal note is self-explanatory, but, we don't realize that there are mirror bills, and usually that is for the appropriations bill. There have been times where committees will run a mirror bill, but, for a different topic, but that's what we're talking about. It's the same bill that on both sides. And so a lot of times when the legislature is on a time crunch, they may run a mirror bill so they can get it through the process, a little faster. And then a substitute bill is a bill that if the committee is working a bill and there are so many changes and so many amendments to the bill, the committee may request a substitute bill. And so they will absolutely just kind of rewrite the bill and then bring it out of committee, and that will be a substitute bill. And so all of the amendments will be included, and it's just the text, not necessarily amendments to the bill anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cleaner version, easier for the committee members or the sponsor to explain the overall concept of a bill in a substitute bill, rather than going line by line, telling them why we changed this word to that word and all that kind of stuff. So it just moves the process along a little faster as well.
So, and the next slide is contacting your legislator. And so the legislative website is a wealth of information. It provides just about every way that, option to contact your legislator. You can either by email, and you can email them by their first name dot last name at wyoleg.gov. You can contact them on the website by clicking the tab Legislators. You can write to your legislator. You can hit the online hotline. I don't think a lot of people realize that that's still operating.
Yeah.
And where, your committee secretaries will be answering, some of those calls. And so you have that first connection with the secretary. And, vote yes, vote no is usually the message that you would leave. And
I will add here, you can oftentimes on the legislative website, it'll have their cell phone numbers. Sending them a text is sometimes a far better idea than trying to email them. What we are finding out is that they get thousands of emails, and they're from national organizations that just like dump all this, and they're the same message over and over again. But they have so many emails in any given day that they're going to have a hard time finding it. So if you do email them on the subject line, put in there that you are a constituent, so that they know it's coming from someone in their community that can or cannot, or that can or will not vote for them. So just be very cautious of that, because they're just inundated with too many emails. And a lot of them have told us, just send me a text. I prefer a text. Mm-hmm. So that's just a heads up on that.
Yeah, and I oftentimes, if I need to send an email because it needs to be a little bit longer than a text would be ideal for, I'll still text them and say, hey, I just sent you a time-sensitive email. Can you take a look, or something along those lines?
Absolutely.
Excellent idea.
And then if you're on site, just send a note in and say, some information is coming your way.
And we didn't even mention that. That's kind of what our job is. We go to the lobby and we have these little note cards, and we send in little notes to the legislators. You can't send in notes on third reading, but you can all the rest of the time, and ask them to come out and visit. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's how we get to know them. We send in notes and they come out and visit. Now, freshmen are usually a little shy about that the first year they're there, but they catch on. They actually do catch on that that when a constituent or us as consultants send in a note, it's because we have something important we need to share with them.
So we strongly encourage you to, if you're visiting the Capitol, send a note into your legislators. And, Lori and I are certainly available to help with you with that process. And, just introduce yourself or just say hello. And, that is just, a great communicative tool it gets lonely down there sometimes. It's kind of nice to see a friendly face from home.
They really do.
Yeah.
They appreciate
They
it,
do.
and they appreciate knowing that you're there. So, actually, excuse me, I'm going to go make the dogs quit barking.
Okay. So then looking at, while Lori stepped aside, we just are looking at the website and what you're going to find on the website. And yeah, I don't know if you have the opportunity to be able to look at the Wyoming website as we go through this, but this is the information that you're going to find if you go to, the wyoleg.gov. You're going to find the daily calendar.
Sherilyn, why don't we jump to the next slide
Okay.
with the resources, and then I'll share my screen on the website and I'll
Perfect.
do a quick run through of all
Perfect.
of that before we jump into questions. We're at 12:47, so we got to pay attention to time. But let's jump to the next slide for resources, and we will share this presentation. So if you need these links or anything, take a picture, but we'll also share this. And so there's links here of different things you can use. And then you have another link there. And then I'm going to stop my share. While I'm doing this, folks, if you have questions that you would like Sherilyn, Lori, or myself to answer, please get those put into the chat. I'm going to stop my share and then do a new share of the legislative website. And I'm just going to run through that real quick. And if Sherilyn and Lori, anything you want me to highlight that I'm not highlighting, please tell me.
Okay.
So you all should be able to see the website, hopefully.
There we go.
Perfect.
Okay. So this is wyoleg.gov. Right away, there's a scrolling ticker here that gives you a lot of time-sensitive, pertinent information, budget session, current 2026 legislation. There's a link right here, but you can also click session information right here, and it'll take you to that. I'll go to that page shortly. You can click meeting schedule. You can also click down here, legislative meetings. You can click session schedule, and that's also down here too below. I mentioned the session schedule earlier. This is what I was talking about, is this PDF here that outlines all the deadlines. We won't go over that right this exact moment, but those exist. If you're interested in the special events that are occurring, a lot of these are by invitation only or only open to legislators, but you'll see all the different special events, and you'll see our breakfast is listed, let's see here, right here, or somewhere here, Friday, there it is. Wyoming Airports Coalition Breakfast on February 20th at the Capitol. You'll see more information coming out about that shortly. So that's information on the calendars. If you want to learn more about the committees, you can go click here. It's going to show you all the different committees. You can click on any one of these. Let's click appropriations to start out. It's going to load. Here's their meeting schedule, their members. You can click on any one of their names to go to their profile, get contact information. You can subscribe to any one of these. So when they have meeting agendas or meeting notifications go out, you get those in your email automatically, and that's very beneficial to do. There's select and task force meetings here. So our Air Transportation Committee that met in September, that's that. You have councils and commissions, session information here at the bottom. And I want to point that out, at any time, you can always scroll to the bottom and get back to these main things here. But session information, here's all the bills that are filed so far. Here's the session calendar. They don't have anything populated there yet. And then audio, video, these will be the links. You can also click up in the top right to the YouTube link up here to see the committees and all the floor sessions. It'll go right to the state website. So those are all the bills that are filed so far for the session. You want to do committee bills, search bills, watch live video. And then probably most importantly, if you don't know how to get a hold of your legislator, you can click this button here for all the senators. If you want to just type in your county, maybe you have a senator that only covers a tiny corner of your county. So like for me, as I sit here and try to type, I type Sweetwater, and it's going to show all the legislators or all the senators, I'm sorry, that touch Sweetwater County. If you want to look at the neighboring county, you can do the same thing, and it has contact information and everything. One thing too that I've learned over time is look at the URL for a lot of these. Like right here, if you wanted to switch to house, instead of scrolling down or whatever, I just changed the S to an H, and boom, I'm on the house. And then when you're looking at a bill, so let's go back. These are just things I've learned over the years as I do this a lot. Let's say I'm looking at this bill here, and I quickly want to switch over to Senate File 20. I just changed this URL to that, and boom, there's that next bill. So instead of having to go back and forth, you can quickly just change the URL and get to the where you're trying to go. This is what you see on a bill page. If you want to read the bill text, you will see it all there. If you want to see it in a PDF form, how it's introduced, you click here. If you want to see a fiscal note, what is the financial impact of this bill, you click there. If you want to see status information, you can click here. Amendments will be filed here. The fiscal notes here as well. The votes will be recorded here, and then an actual digest of the bill. And then eventually you'll see more links over here once there's an engrossed or enrolled or substitute bill. They'll all happen over here. And then this is a quick reference here of where the last action was, what's the scheduled meeting, scheduled floor sessions, etc. And as we go back to the master list of bills here, you'll always see a column for last action, enrolled number, chapter number, who the sponsor is. So if you're looking for somebody says, hey, I got a great bill I sponsored, and you can't remember what the name of the bill was or the bill number, but you know it was, let's say Riggins. You can type in Riggins and you can find the bills that he has sponsored, which that's not a good bill, by the way, for us. That's why that was top of mind, because I knew he had filed a bill that wasn't good for us. So, but with that, the other thing I would point out is if you ever want to look at the state statutes, so when they publish a bill, it's amending it, usually creating or amending existing statute or deleting existing statute. And if you want to know what that looks like and read it into the statute, then you come up here and click statutes, and you can click in download format, or you can come here and see it in the Rocket NXT platform, and you can click all the titles. You can go to for Title 10 Aeronautics. You can click here. You can click on any one of these to get to that actual, like that bill's been repealed. Of course, I picked one that's all been repealed. But right there's your statutes. And you can also pull it via PDF. There's a lot of other sources, but that's where I generally go. The nice thing is you can search. If you wanted to search all of the titles for airport or a specific topic, this is really beneficial when you're writing legislation. You can go find everything that talks about an airport right there. And so I use that tool quite often. As we go back to the website, there's resolutions, memorials, information there. If you want to learn more, click about the legislature. This will give you information about the sessions and even start dates for sessions all the way through 2029. Redistricting information from 2022. There's just a whole host of information, and you can dive deeper and deeper throughout this whole website and really get any information that you would ever want. So we are at 12:54. I'm going to stop my share. I think we have one. Oh, I got to run. Thanks for all the good info. So if there's any questions, and Kyle came on, he's better at managing this than I am. So I'll maybe let Kyle do the management of any questions that come up. So.
No, not better at all. But great job. Thank you so much to all of you for the information. And I think our attendees agree. We haven't had many questions submitted through the chat or Q&A. So definitely not better, but I'm happy to help where I can.
So, Kyle, while we wait for anybody that might pipe in with a question, I will add a couple things. Plan, if you can be, to be in Cheyenne February 19th and 20th. Wyoming Airports Coalition will be there in force. We'll be doing some meetings. We'll have our breakfast with legislators on Friday morning. Information will get emailed out regarding that to our mailing list as a coalition. We'll look for some RSVPs so we can make sure we have enough food for the breakfast. We're gonna have there'll be Aeronautics Commission meeting. There'll be some other things that happen during that period, those 2 days. We are also coordinating coverage at the legislature. So I plan to be there for almost the entire session. But if others would like to join us down there, if you want to learn more, you want to see the legislature in action, see it firsthand, sit next to Lori or Sherilyn and learn how they do what they do. I got to tell you, I've learned so much from them. Sitting in the hallway, the lobby right outside the floor to be able to speak to legislators as they come in and out has been fantastic. Being up in the mezzanine, the gallery overlooking the debate, you learn so much just by sitting there and watching and learning. I love it. I could drink it up. I just love the process. I love the institution. Don't always love how it pans out down there. But the process, there's a lot to respect there. And I would encourage you, if you find yourself in Cheyenne at all during the session, even if you're not there to specifically represent airports, but you find yourself there and you want to go spend an hour at the Capitol, get a hold of me, get a hold of Sherilyn, get a hold of Lori, and say, hey, can I follow you around for an hour? Can I come learn and just see what it's like? And like I said, I'll be there at least for the first 3 weeks. I'm hoping our air service funding is locked in and sealed and good to go by the end of the 3rd week, so I don't have to be there the 4th week. But look forward to having you all join us as we tackle all of that. So I'll be looking for more emails on that front, calls to action. When we send calls to action, we need you to be reaching out. And hopefully that is not the first time you've reached out to your legislator. Take the time between now and February 9th to invite your legislator to your airport, invite them out to coffee, go to a community event where they're at and talk to them. You're not going to get every one of them to respond. What I'm doing here in Sweetwater County is I've set up about 15 different date and time slots, morning, afternoon, evening, weekend time slots between Christmas and the beginning of the session, and sent out a doodle poll to my legislators and said, hey, love to spend 2 hours with you to talk about the airport. Please sign up. I've had 6 of them sign up. And so we're going to meet with those 6 and hope others will sign up. And otherwise, I'll meet them at other community events. But take the time to talk to them so that the first communication they're getting from you is not a, hey, I need you or I need something. Talk about the successes of your airports, the challenges of your airports, the opportunities for the state, opportunities for them. Lots of times they want ideas. They want ideas on how they can look really smart in front of their colleagues. So you can be the brains behind them, making them feel really, really smart. And so do what you can to help them. And don't worry about whether they have an R or a D or a Freedom Caucus or a Wyoming Caucus behind their name. Our job is to communicate and educate. That's our job. And if they listen, great. If they don't, that's their prerogative. But if we don't put our best foot forward, we can't be mad at them for not supporting us. So don't worry about any of that. You may have seen me quoted in Cowboy State Daily saying, I don't care what color coat they wear. I don't care what other letters behind their name. My job is to communicate. Their job is to vote. And so that's the way we got to treat it. So.
Absolutely. And I would just kind of follow up and in the conversation with always treat them with respect. Yelling at legislators is not a good thing to do. It never works. You're not going to get your point across. And I firmly believe, regardless, as Devin said, whether it's an R or D or Freedom Caucus or Wyoming Caucus or whoever they are, I firmly believe they all ran for that office because they have the best interests of Wyoming in their hearts. Now, they may not see it the same way we do, but they're there to do the best that they can. So always keep that in mind.
Very well said. And again, thank you, Lori. Thank you, Sherilyn. Devin, thank you. And thank you to our attendees. We appreciate you taking time out of your day and participating in this virtual lunch and learn. The more that you engage as a member of our coalition, the better our coalition is, and also the way that our coalition can benefit you and your community. So thank you so much for joining us today. With that, let's sign off. Thank you again to our presenters, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks.